Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Welcome. A Yemeni official said that Yemeni security forces have arrested a second member of the Al-Qaeda network, an Egyptian, Sayyid Imam Sharif, during a raid in the province of Abyan, south of the country. Just hours ago, Yemeni forces arrested a top Yemeni Al-Qaeda leader during the same operation. The source confirmed that the person arrested was Abdul Rauf Nasib, known as Abu Muhjim, who escaped a United States Central Intelligence Agency assassination attempt in 2002. The German court decided to re-examine the case of the Moroccan defendant Munir al-Musaddiq, who was the first man found guilty over the September 11 attacks and who has links to Al-Qaeda. This comes after Musaddiq's lawyer appealed for a new review, just a month after a fellow suspect was acquitted on similar charges. The previous court ruling ordered Musaddiq to a 15 years prison sentence. The Israeli police arrested a young Israeli Jewish man and his father in the city of Haifa, in northern Israel, for carrying out terrorist operations by placing bombs in cars belonging to Arabs and following them. Our correspondent, Shireen Yunus, said the two people confessed during their interrogation that they were responsible for plotting against an Arab-Israeli lawmaker, Issam Mukhawel, 9 months ago. They also admitted stalking two Arab-Israeli Knesset members, Azmi Bshara and Ahmad al-Tibi.
لقي 3 أشخاص حتفهم وأصيب 4 آخرون بعد أن تحطمت طائرة شحن أوكرانية في مطار باكو في أذربيجان.
3 people were killed and 4 others were injured after a Ukrainian cargo plane crashed in the Baku airport in Azerbaijan during takeoff. The Azeri Ministry of Transportation announced that the plane crashed due to technical difficulties when it reached 50 meters. The plane took off from Turkey heading toward the Afghani capital of Kabul. The stopover in Baku was supposed to be brief.
استقال السفير الفنزويلي لدى الأمم المتحدة ميلوس الكالي.
The Venezuelan ambassador to the United Nations, Malus Al-Khali, resigned in protest of President Hugo Chavez. Meanwhile, government authorities and opponents in Venezuela began meeting to find a solution. Earlier, the National Electoral Council announced that the opponents had not yet collected enough signatures for a recall referendum to remove the president from power. An official from the National Electoral Council said that negotiations are being conducted at the council's headquarters with the organized movement of democratic opposition, which includes at least 50 parties, 4 labor unions, and representatives from the government of the United States and the Carter Center. In a joint press conference with Italian Prime Minister Sergio Berlusconi in Rome, British Prime Minister Tony Blair praised the relations between his country and Italy. This comes at the end of their discussion 2 weeks after a 3-way summit in Berlin that included Blair, German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, and French President Jacques Chirac. China had decided to improve its image by adding new laws that guarantee the protection of property rights and human rights. These 2 issues will be discussed during the annual session of the Chinese parliament that will be held within hours in Beijing. These are the first major measures taken by China since the Communist Revolution more than half a century ago, and since discussions were carried out between China and the United States about the issue of human rights. United States and Filipino forces continued military maneuvers in the region of Aniya in northern Manila. Nearly 2,500 U.S. soldiers backed by air and Navy fighters participated in the maneuvers with the Filipino Navy in an operation called Shoulder to Shoulder. Meanwhile, left-wing activists in the Philippines say the maneuvers are a confirmation of an increase of U.S. forces in Asia. The current president of the Iraqi Governing Council, Mohammed Bahr al-Alloum, confirmed that the temporary constitution will be signed tomorrow after a 24-hour delay due to the declared national days of mourning that followed the Baghdad and Karbala explosions. Bahr al-Alloum added that 3 people were arrested in the Najaf. They are suspected of being linked to the 2 explosions. Victims of the last Tuesday's explosions were admitted to the Qazimiya hospital in Baghdad. The current president of the Iraqi Interim Governing Council, Mohammed Bahr al-Alloum, paid a quick visit to the hospital and visited the survivors of that catastrophic incident.
3 people are now under arrest in Najaf for an attempted operation, but thank God nothing has happened in Najaf, and the investigations are underway.
Sir, has it been determined if they belong to Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi group?
Please, when the investigation is completed, we will announce the results.
A hospital located near the Qazim shrine stepped up its security measures, and the hospital beds were occupied by the victims of the bombings.
I came out of the tent and there was a loud explosion. I pushed my dad aside and I was hit.
His name is Yusuf. He is the only one who survived out of his 7-member family. His parents and 4 brothers and sisters were killed in the explosion. This woman is volunteering to take care of him.
He is now in a comatose state.
The President's visit may somewhat help the patients emotionally in dealing with the suffering they have been enduring in Iraq. Security measures were increased in the Qazimiya. However, an overwhelming feeling of sadness still overshadows the city. The walls are covered with black banners. Meanwhile, a number of groups in Iraq continue to express their condemnation of the bombings, such as the Islamic parties, the Council of Islamic Scholars, and most recently, the High Authority for Religious Education and Research.
A Muslim can never commit such atrocities. Our religion prohibits such gruesome actions. The coalition forces are the ones responsible for this horrific crime.
It seems that security and fear of everything dominate the thoughts of the Iraqis. A long war has ended, and now they are suffering a more violent and fierce war. Hamza Hussein, Abu Dhabi Television, Baghdad.
A statement attributed to Al-Qaeda denied the network was responsible for the wave of anti-Shiite attacks in Baghdad and Karbala. A statement which was obtained by the London-based Arab newspaper Al-Quds Al-Arabi said, quote, "We strike the American crusaders and their allies." It added the attacks were an American plot aimed at provoking sectarian conflict between Muslims in Iraq. The statement also called on Iraqis to be vigilant, saying America wants you to help it against the Mujahideen, and the Mujahideen call on you to declare war on America, unquote. Meanwhile, Polish forces in occupied Iraq said Thursday that they captured 7 suspected Al-Qaeda network members, 2 of them in the past week. The countdown to Tuesday's bombings of the holy city of Karbala and Baghdad. And Iraqi police sources said one of Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi's henchmen was arrested in the holy city of Najaf late on Wednesday. An Iraqi interrogation officer told Al-Manar channel that the man is called Mohammed Hanoun Hamoud and that he was arrested after his house was raided where fake IDs were found, among which is a fake Iraqi police officer's ID. Hamoud confessed during interrogation that there is a car bomb in the city. He also confessed that there exists a network of his followers, what prompted Iraqi police forces to raid several houses and arrest some more suspects. Iraqi police said that unknown attackers bombed Thursday a police station in the northern city of Mosul, where 3 police officers were injured, 1 seriously. A police spokesman said that mortars fell on the station, the nearby mosque and the street. He added that the attackers managed to escape. In another development, 3 rockets were fired at the Baghdad U.S. occupation headquarters Wednesday night. At the same time, U.S. Administrator of Occupied Iraq, Paul Bremer, was due to give a news conference. A military spokesman said that no casualties resulted from the attack.
Their purpose was clear: incitement of
Yemeni security forces said they have arrested one of the top leaders of the Al-Qaeda network in Yemen on Thursday during what they called a hunt for extremists in the southern province of Abyan. Security forces named the man as Abdul Rauf Nasib, the sole survivor of a U.S. missile attack in eastern Yemen in November 2002. The forces, backed by helicopters and armored vehicles, were deployed in the area a day earlier, surrounding what they said were some 12 Al-Qaeda suspects. Israeli occupation forces killed a 14-year-old Palestinian, Mohammed Uthman, and wounded 5 other teenagers when they bombed Al-Amariya school during an incursion in Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip on Thursday. Israeli warplanes also bombed the house of Aouni Kalab in Rafah, killing him while wounding 11 other Palestinians. Meanwhile, Hamas vowed it would not stop its struggle against Israeli occupation, a day after Israeli occupation troops killed 3 Hamas members in an Israeli airstrike near Gaza City.
Rafah of Gaza Strip is being the scene for daily Israeli occupation aggressions. Israeli troops shot and killed a Palestinian schoolboy and wounded 5 others during an incursion in the Tel al-Sultan area in southern Gaza Strip. Al-Manar correspondent in Gaza said Israeli occupation troops manning Abraz Zughrab near the Palestinian-Egyptian borders opened their heavy machine guns on students holding their bags and dressing their school costumes. 14-year-old Mohammed Uthman was in his school courtyard when Israeli troops shot him and fatally wounded him in the stomach. Israeli occupation troops also killed another Palestinian and wounded 11 others in a huge explosion in Rafah. The Palestinian Popular Resistance Committee said their Rafah field commander Aouni Kalab was killed by an Israeli missile that struck his house as Israeli tanks rumbled in the city and Israeli warplanes hovered the skies. The occupation troops also completely demolished several other houses in the area. The aggression followed an Israeli airstrike in central Gaza Strip on Wednesday, which killed 3 Hamas fighters. Their car was blown to pieces by 2 rockets fired close to the Israeli settlement of Netzarim. A Hamas statement swore revenge, urging a new wave of attacks by all cells code against the Zionist occupation.
This is another Zionist crime against our people. This enemy wants our people to surrender, and they are mistaken. We will fight until victory. These crimes are a cover-up for their defeat in Gaza.
They want to left Gaza, but before leaving Gaza, they want to increase their massacres against our people every way.
Thousands of Palestinians shouting for revenge attended the funerals in Gaza on Thursday for the 3 Hamas fighters. The strike was the second target killings in 5 days and a sign that Israel is intensifying aggressions against Palestinians.
Israeli security services were on maximum alert on Thursday upon intelligence reports on several Palestinian operations are being prepared for. An Israeli police spokesman in Tel Aviv said thousands of extra border guards and police officers were deployed in sensitive sectors, notably in schools, commercial centers and shopping malls. Roadblocks had also been set up on roads in major cities. These measures come as Israelis prepare to celebrate the Jewish festival of Purim this weekend, which includes marches and carnivals. An Israeli settler was slightly injured when her car was attacked with a hand grenade near the Gosh Etzion settlement's compound near Bethlehem in the West Bank. Israeli occupation forces had earlier penetrated into the West Bank town of Nablus, where they detained 4 Palestinians, among which is a Palestinian military intelligence officer. Occupation troops also detained 2 Palestinian police officers in the Kfar Khalil town southeast of Nablus. Israeli occupation army under orders to dismantle settlement outposts in the West Bank is bracing itself for a possible revolt within the ranks from Israeli soldiers who backed the settlers. Israeli Army Chief of Staff General Moshe Ya'alon issued a public warning that any refusal to obey orders would pose, quote, a danger to the future of the State of Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon has announced plans to dismantle almost all the authorized settlements in the Gaza Strip. Since Sharon's announcement last month, the settlers' movement has been extensively lobbying military chiefs against the project. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon Wednesday denied involvement in a scandal over the former Israeli prisoner reservist Colonel Al-Hanan Tenenbaum, who was freed as part of a deal with Hezbollah in January 2004. Igniting the scandal, Israeli daily Ma'ariv reported earlier this week that Sharon had a close business relationship with the father-in-law of Tenenbaum. Ma'ariv said since the prisoner exchange deal was signed, there was not a home in Israel where the question was asked, why did Sharon fight for Tenenbaum with such unusual energy? The Daily said Sharon should resign over the affair, but in an interview with Israeli television, the premier said he had no intentions to resign, as he declined to answer whether he would be willing to undergo a lie detector test.
No, it's not possible that he has any information that might embarrass me. I have nothing to hide. I would say that for many years, very many years, I have had no contact with him. I have never met Tenenbaum. I did not even know about his existence. I did not know about such an officer who had served in the IDF. The first time I have heard about him was when I was informed he was held by the Hezbollah in Beirut. I cannot free myself from the impression that this is a vicious liberal, yes, the likes of which I've never encountered.
A group of Israelis, including 2 former military men, condemned the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories during a rally held in Paris on Wednesday. The protesters said the number of Israelis who are rejecting the occupation is incessantly growing, as they do not feel that it is a kind of treason or anti-Semitic sentiments. They said now they are fed up with the occupation and they are able to say no, to criticize the Israeli government and to express their intention not to commit themselves to following illegitimate and immoral orders. Lebanese army said in a statement an Israeli reconnaissance plane coming from over the sea violated early Thursday the Lebanese skies, flying over the southern cities of Sidon and Khalde before leaving an hour later. Further Israeli occupation troops staged in the past few hours military maneuvers in the Labani Hill near the UN delineated blue line using automatic weapons. The exercises lasted for more than 2 hours and were joined by Israeli warplanes rounds over occupied Lebanese Sheba farms and occupied Syrian Golan Heights.
Iraq has witnessed more death with attacks in Baghdad and Mosul. A rocket slammed into a Baghdad street near a telephone exchange, killing at least 3 people. The rocket had skidded along the ground after initial impact, hitting a car and killing its occupants. Only yesterday, a bomb exploded in another telephone exchange in Baghdad, raising fear that guerrillas may be targeting Iraq's communications system. In the north of the country, guerrillas in Mosul launched at least 5 mortar rounds at a police station and a mosque, injuring 3 people, including a police officer, before fleeing in a car. Police who cordoned off the area and began searching vehicles said one of the injured was in serious condition. Despite the latest violence, life began to return to normal in Karbala following the explosions Tuesday that left 169 people dead and more than 133 wounded. The attack on Tuesday had come as worshippers marked the holiest day of the Muslim Shiite calendar, sparking fears of sectarian violence. The main religious leaders in Iraq had urged calm in a country with deep ethnic and religious division. Since the explosion, security has been stepped up across the city, with cars and drivers searched at various Iraqi police checkpoints. But British Prime Minister Tony Blair, on a visit to Italy, said that the upsurge of violence in Iraq did not mean civil war.
People talk of this as sometimes as a civil war. A civil war is two parts of a country in hostility to one another. This isn't what's happening in Iraq. The vast majority of people, whether they're Kurds in the north of Iraq or Shias in the south or Sunnis in the middle of Iraq, they want to work together. The terrorist act the other day was condemned by leaders of all main three parts of the country. And therefore, there's no reason why they can't make this political progress.
The only man convicted over the September 11th attacks has won the right to a retrial in a German appeal ruling. Moroccan Munir al-Mutasaddiq was jailed for 15 years last February after being convicted of conspiracy to murder in the 2001 attacks in America and for membership of a terrorist organization, a German Al-Qaeda cell. The Supreme Court judge said the state could not abandon principles of justice, however grave the crime, and criticized the fight against terrorism as a wild and uncontrolled war. Mutasaddiq's lawyers had argued that new evidence which secured the acquittal of his friend Abdelghani Mzoudi on similar charges made the conviction unreliable. They said they would demand that Mutasaddiq be released from custody in Hamburg pending his new trial. 10,000 rail workers combed France's sprawling train track network for bombs after an unknown group threatened to attack trains. The government also said it had heightened security for commuters alarmed by the threat. The Conservative government, trying to reassure voters ahead of regional elections, vowed to identify and stop the previously unknown group, which says it has planted 10 bombs and will explode them if it is not paid 4 million euros. The government said it is treating it as a criminal case and ruled out the involvement of Islamic groups. Police seem to have few clues to go on except threatening letters sent to President Jacques Chirac and the Interior Ministry by a group called AFZ, and indirect contacts through a few personal messages placed in liberation newspapers. Democratic nominee John Kerry accused President George W. Bush of broken promises, and the president replied accusing Kerry of fluctuating opinions. That is how the U.S. presidential election campaign kicked off. In what is promised to be a bitter and close 8-month election battle, the two major nominees began their campaigns in a flurry of attacks and flag-waving ads. Predictably, Bush unveiled his first ads using images of the September 11th attacks to salvage his image as a strong leader following a year of foreign and domestic disappointments. On his first day as the Democratic nominee, Kerry headed to the key battleground state of Florida and accused Bush of failure to deliver on national security and the war in Iraq. Kerry wrapped up the nomination on Tuesday by scoring wins in 9 of the 10 Democratic presidential contests and driving his last remaining major rival, John Edwards, out of the race.
Thousands of residents of the Iraqi cities of Karbala and Qazimiyah on Thursday took part at a funeral procession to bury those martyred in Tuesday's coordinated attacks on the Shiite mourners in those cities. Chanting slogans, the ralliers voiced their rage over their different attitudes of the occupation forces towards the recent deadly attacks on Ashura mourners. CNN reports fearing possible attacks by the angry participants. The American forces were not in sight during the funeral service. In the meantime, Iranian Charge d'Affaires in Iraq, Hassan Kazemi has announced 49 Iranian pilgrims have been killed and 115 others injured in Tuesday's terrorist attacks. He also added negotiations are still underway to airlift the victims to Iran. Elsewhere in the day, tens of those injured at the bloody incidents in Karbala and Qazimiyah have been ferried into Iran through the borderlines of Khosravi and Mehran, where the army choppers were on hand to dispatch the victims to other Iranian cities. Local authorities in the western province of Ilam have arranged for 7,000 buses to quickly transfer an influx of homecoming Iranian pilgrims to their hometowns. Meanwhile, Iranian Interior Ministry announced that Iran-Iraq borders will be closed until a second notice. Iran and Pakistan signed 7 cooperation agreements on Thursday upon arrival by the Iranian First Vice President Mohammad Reza Aref in Islamabad, Pakistan. The agreements were signed Thursday by Iran's Minister of Roads and Transportation Ahmad Khorram, Finance and Economic Affairs Minister Tahmasp Mazaheri, and Head of Iran's Export Development Center Khosrow Taj, with their Pakistani counterparts. Under the deals, Tehran and Islamabad will cooperate in various fields, such as laying the Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline, setting up air, rail, and road links, establishing a joint investment company, and elimination of double taxation. Earlier in the day, Mr. Aref, who is visiting Pakistan to attend the Iran-Pakistan 14th Joint Economic Commission, had a meeting with Pakistan's Prime Minister Mir Zafarullah Khan Jamali, where the two sides reaffirmed their country's potential to be used for the optimal level of cooperation. This is while the two top diplomats also discussed regional and international developments.
Tunisia's new Prime Minister called today to hold early national elections, which will be Prime Minister Abdullah Ahmed Badawi's first electoral test since taking over in October after Mahathir retired. No date was immediately set, but polls are expected in the next 2 or 3 weeks. In a statement, Abdullah said that King Sayed Sirajuddin Sayed Putra Jamalullahi had signed a decree dissolving parliament within a week. The Election Commission will meet within 4 days to set dates for nominating candidates and holding the polls. Voters will select 219 members for a new federal parliament and 505 representatives for legislatures in 12 of Malaysia's 13 states. In Venezuela, opposition leaders urged followers to keep protesting and begged international observers for help after Venezuela's election council ruled against a petition to force a presidential recall referendum. Demonstrators hurled rocks and gasoline bombs at soldiers as protests intensified Tuesday night after Venezuela's National Elections Council announced its decision. Opponents of President Hugo Chavez say they submitted more than 3.4 million signatures. Some 2.4 million are needed for a recall election, but Council President Francisco Carrasquillo announced that just 1.83 million signatures were deemed valid. Another 1.11 million signatures may be valid if citizens confirm they signed. A gun battle erupted today between Haitian rebels and militant loyalists of ousted President Jean-Bertrand Aristide in the city of Las Salinas. Rebels and Aristide militants also fought a gun battle at the city's seaport, which has been looted over the past few days. Casualty tolls were not immediately available. Meanwhile, Haiti's political opposition met with interim President Boniface Alexander, demanding that he name a new prime minister.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.